Okay, today we're going to look at factoring and then how to solve once we factor. To start with, I'm going to initially look at these four quick problems. Okay? Now this first one, 16x squared minus 8x plus 1. Now with this, I'll go ahead and do my initial diamond problem. 16 times 1 is 16. And then negative 8 will go down here. Okay? Now for 16 and 16, I believe this will be negative 4 and negative 4. Now because a is not equal to 1, I'm going to use the split fraction approach. I'm going to put 16x here, and I'll put the same over here. In each lower section, below that, I'm going to go ahead and put in negative 4, and the other one happens to be the same, negative 4. I'm going to reduce that to 4x over negative 1, and this is the same. So this will become 4x minus 1 times 4x minus 1, and it's better off if we write it as 4x minus 1 quantity squared. Now this is known as a binomial squared. There's some other ways to recognize it, but this is probably a good common way of doing it. Let's look at this number 2. Okay, we start out by doing 3 times negative 7, negative 21. That goes to negative 11. All right, 21 is a little challenging, and it's going to be subtracting. So 3 times 7, not a lot that goes into 3 times 7. Let me try. I apologize, folks. For the magic of video, I realized that should have been 6x minus 7. So I have negative 42 going to negative 11. All right, so this is going to be a subtraction problem. Now 42 is kind of tough. I know it's 2 times 21, and that doesn't subtract to that. Now, I know if 21 is a factor, 14 probably is as well. I think 14 times 3 is going to work. Yes, indeedy, folks, 14 times 3. It'll be negative 14 and a positive 3. Now my split fraction will have a 6x. And I have that slightly backwards, but it's not going to matter. 6x. Divide that by negative 14. Divide the other one by 3. Let's reduce. 6 and 14 can be reduced by a factor of 2. So that is 2x minus 7. 6 and 3 is the same as 2 over 1. And I do need the 1 here. So that's going to be, I'm sorry, this should have been 3. So 3x minus 7, 2x plus 1. All right, on to the third one. X squared equals 4. Now this time we're solving instead of factoring. So I'm going to try to square root this. So oftentimes what we'll do is we'll square root both sides when it's already like that. So I know the first root is positive 2. Now when you have an equation, there's actually another way of getting to 4. What about negative 2 times negative 2? Is that also equal to positive 4? So that's my second answer, what we call the negative root. Okay? Now over here, number 4 is based on a new thing we're going to learn today, which you might have learned before, called the zero product property. Now, the zero product property tells me that anything times equals 0 is going to be 0. Okay. Okay, zero product property. That means that any two numbers multiplied together getting an answer of 0, let's say I have some letter A times some letter B is equal to 0. Either one of the numbers A equals 0 or B equals 0. So in this case, we've got two things being multiplied. X minus 2 is one group, kind of like the A. X plus 2 is another group, kind of like the B. So either we have x minus 2 equals 0 or x plus 2 equals 0. If I add 2, one answer is x is equal to positive 2, or the other answer, x equals negative 2. Interestingly enough, that's the same as what we got for this one. All right, moving on. Solving quadratic functions. Now we just kind of practice with this type. If I have a simple one, what you want to do is you first want to isolate the variable. I'll say isolate the square. Okay? My second step, which I'm going to do, so the second step we'll do after that is to square root both sides. Now in doing that, what we should have, I did that here. And my last step is we're going to have a positive root, and we're also going to have a negative root. Oh, that didn't work, so we'll keep it just like that. So here, what I did was I square rooted x squared. I square rooted 49. Here's my positive root. There's my negative root. All right, next. We're going to take the same problem and talk about it as factoring. So our first step in factoring is add or subtract so one side is equal to 0. So I'm going to get to this once again. X squared minus 49 equals 0. Now this type, there's a number of ways of doing it. I like to do this using difference of squares. I'll find the square root of x, which is x, the square root of 49, which is 7. So I know it's going to be x plus 7 has one factor, and x minus 7 has the other. That's factoring it completely. Nothing else can take out. The third thing we're going to do is set each factor expression equal to 0, and then we'll solve. So I'll say, all right, x plus 7 equals 0. So I get one answer, x equals negative 7 by simply subtracting 7. X minus 7 equals 0, add 7. So this other answer, x equals positive 7. Now a third way I can do it is by graphing. And I'm going to take this same equation, and I'm going to go ahead and graph that. Now I don't have a graphing calculator with me. I do know from this, if I graphed it by hand, that my h would equal to 0 and k is going to equal to negative 49. And that's not going to graph very easily because it's going to be all over the place. And it's going to be difficult to show right here. So what I'll show is an approximation. And I'll go ahead and bring out a basic graph on this one. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and approximate, and I'm going to have the y values go by tens. Okay. I can actually go by 5s to get to 49. So I'll go by 5s all around. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's negative 10. Sorry, that's negative. If it's by 5s, that's going to be negative 25. $30, $40, 1, 2, 3, 4, and here's negative 50. Okay, so there is my about 49 is going to be my vertex. The line of symmetry is straight up here. Okay, now in doing this, it's a little challenging to show. What I want to show is that for every, if I go, if it's a 1 for 1, the first space, in this case, since each space, I'm going to have each of these spaces be worth 1. just to stretch it out a little bit. This won't be an accurate graph, but it's basically 1 for 1. So my first space is actually going to be 5 and 5 over here. Well, let me just show the basic graph on this. Okay, on the graphing calculator, I don't have 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, it's going to be approximately like this. That's one side. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's the other side. Okay? All right, so if I do that, oftentimes we'll do this on the graphing calculator. I'm looking for the x-intercepts. Now, the x-intercepts are also known as the roots. So I have 3 possible names. Actually, there's more. The graphing thing is called the intercepts. It's often known as the roots, and another name that's used quite frequently is called the zeros. Okay? So here is one of the roots, and that answer, x equals -7. Here's the other root, and that is x equals +7. So as we graph these, we can get some nice solutions on here. I'm checking to see. I don't think I have the TI calculator on this particular screen. Maybe I do. Oh yeah, I've got a calculator in this one, and let me show you a little more specifically what this is going to look like. And I haven't opened this all year, so maybe I should kind of put this down and wait a few minutes for some other stuff to happen. Okay, now next on here, these are some of the theories from our textbook in section 4-5. Okay, so it's asking us talks about what the zero of the function is, what we just talked about. Wherever it intersects the x-axis, it's called the zero of the function. To find the zeros, solve the quadratic equation. Many ways of solving it. And here's an example of factoring. Okay, let me give you another example of a quick factoring. Let's say I have x squared minus 7x plus 10 equals 0. If you do the diamond, you'll have a 10 going to -7. So that's 1 times 10 gives you 10. And here I know it would be 5 times 2, but it would be -5 times -2. So my factors are x minus 5 times x minus 2. I said that equals 0. Then we said each individual factor equal to 0. X minus 5 equals 0, comma, x minus 2 equals 0. I add 5, one answer, x equals 5. The other answer, x equals -2. Now, if I have that graphing calculator working, which I think I do, I can probably use that to help me graph that same one. I can hit clear on that, clear again, and I'm going to go to my y equals, clear out anything I have, and I'll put the original equation in here. X squared minus 7x, and I'll say plus 10. All right? And then I'm going to go ahead and I'll double check my window. It's the standard window right now. If I press graph, I can see the basic parabola. Now, we can kind of tell where it is. I'm going to show you what I call the friendly window. Now, in the friendly window, it's based on the number of pixels. So I'm going to do x minimum as being -9.4 and the maximum being +9.4. The minimum one, -6.2, the maximum being +6.2. Now these are special numbers which give you nice numbers when we trace. When I press graph, now when I press trace and I work it to the right, I'm watching the little ant there, it gives you integer answers. There's one nice answer. 2 and negative and 0. I'm going to bring this over here so we can see that in a minute. Okay. So one answer, just like we had before, was +2 right here. The other answer looks like it's right on positive 5. So it's the same exact graph. This time we were able to solve it by graphing. Okay? And we just now we could have done that with the tables. Let me show you on the tables and go back to the calculator. And if I look at the table of the calculator, which is second graph, okay, I didn't quite get my, and I look down here, I want to find the places where y equals to 0. So I come down here, there's one place, positive 2, 2 and 0, x equals 2, y equals, and I scroll down up, there's my other answer. Okay, so I'll bring this over here so we can kind of see that as well. Okay, let me do one more example, and then we'll move on. So let's say I've got something along the line of this. 2x squared minus 6x, and let's go ahead and say plus 9, or I'm going to say equals negative 18. Okay? Okay, actually I meant to say positive 19. So when I do this, the first step is to get one side equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 18 from both sides. I'll rewrite it as 2x squared minus 6x minus 18 equals 0. All right, now in factoring completely, the first thing we do is divide by 2. So I'm going to because I see 2, 6, and 18, so I'm going to divide out of 2. X squared minus 3x minus 9 equals 0. All right, and I'll do my diamond with negative 9 and negative 3. Okay, what multiplies to 9 that's 3 apart? Would you believe? Nothing. Never mind.